So before I tell about what I did for my homework assignment, I did want to tell an experience that I had last year. What I got to do was I lived at the foreign language housing that's here at BYU. Um, and it was quite an experience because I was in the Spanish house specifically, and I thought I knew the language pretty well because in elementary school I was in an immersion program, and then I continued it throughout my secondary school education. But when I was totally immersed, I realized it's a whole different ballgame than just sitting in a classroom and having a teacher make you drill your verbs over and over and over again. So that's an experience I had for a full year and a half. I lived in the Spanish house, and I was only allowed to speak Spanish, and people were only allowed to speak Spanish with me. So that was difficult, and I was typically the one who was kind of falling behind in the way of, like, there were native speakers who lived there, and they were there to help us. They were called our language facilitators, and they would speak to me in Spanish. They would tell jokes, make puns, but I wasn't aware for the first 3 months I was there because I just had never been exposed to that. And so I feel like these kids who come to America and they're going through school, I feel like I understand their struggle quite well. But so my homework that I did for today, I had my Portuguese speaking husband, whom I met at the Flisser. He talked me through something in Portuguese. And you all might know that Portuguese and Spanish are a little similar, but they're not that similar, and I'm not even that good at Spanish, so I felt like this is okay for him to talk to me in Portuguese, because I don't know Portuguese, I barely know Spanish. So I had him just give me one word in English of a hint of what he was going to talk about. And that's because I know that when kids go to school, I feel like they at least have a gauge of, okay, I'm going to a history class right now, I'm going to a math class, I'm going to a music class, so on and so forth. So that's the only context I think they would get, is knowing at least the subject that they're going to be talking about. So he talked to me for about a minute and a half about a schedule, and I assumed it would be about his work day, and I heard a word here and there that I would understand because it's the same in English, such as biblioteca. He said that, and I knew in Spanish that means library, and then I was confused because I was like, he doesn't work at a library. Why did he say library? And I didn't get why he said that. And then he said another word, escola, which is the same in Spanish, which is escuela, which means school. And I was like, okay, he's not talking about what I think he's talking about. And it turns out in reality, he was talking about our schedule for tomorrow, the things we need to get done. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I had the same experience again from the Spanish house last year where I just understood words but not the full context. So I'm aware that there are immigrants who come to America and the kids just get fully immersed into school. Sometimes, like, their native language isn't offered as a class, so they don't even have that as like a way to be able to speak their language, and they just have to speak English. But hopefully, after living at the foreign language housing, I was able to learn a little more Spanish, and I would be happy to speak with my Spanish speaking students in their native tongue. But I also feel like, especially for their parents, this would be useful because I do know that some students who aren't native to America, they still know English pretty well, like enough to be on their feet and be able to walk on their own, but their parents might not know English quite as well as their kids do. So I'd be happy to speak Spanish to them as well. I also think that being a future choir teacher, when I sing, I can sing in any language you give me because phonetics are a lot easier to learn than actual meaning behind. So I feel like choir will be at least an easier class for immigrants to come take because, like, singing is a very aesthetic thing. You feel it, you hear it, you see your teacher explaining it. So hopefully my topic at least will be an outlet for these children who don't know English quite as well. And goodbye.